Hello, good evening and welcome ladies and gentlemen to another week of rapid fire racing action in the iRacing Porsche Cup by CONSPIT, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC known as iRacing and proudly sponsored by none other than the sim racing hardware provider that is CONSPIT. The 2025 Season 4 campaign roars its way into the second half of the season. Last time out, we were at Road Atlanta in the United States of America for an absolute rollercoaster ride. Indeed, we had an incredible conclusion to that race with one of our highest strengths of field for this season. And at the end of it all, we saw one of the highest I-rated drivers on iRacing, if not the highest, in the form of Aaron Vasquez, have to hold off the attacks of Luis Galania and Vito Corrales lap after lap all the way down to the finish line. And with that, it has set us up very nicely as we've made our way into the second half of the 2025 Season 4 campaign. And for Week 7, we're here in Italy at the Autodromo Internazionale Enzo Edino Ferrari, or more commonly known and referred to as Imola. A circuit spanning 3.05 miles and consists of the best part of 17 corners. It is a circuit that's gradually evolved from a high-speed, high-risk, high-thrill circuit to one that is dominated by a contrasting combination of straights and chicanes, plus some hairpins thrown into the mix. But for it all, it is a circuit that demands absolute consistency and also the ability to be absolutely pinpoint precise, not just at braking points, but also when we're in return to the throttle. And for our drivers today, as we make our way into the second half of the season, we're going to look forward to seeing who exactly is going to prove themselves the perfectionist of precision versus those who may be muddled in that mastery. But where are my manners? Allow me to welcome you all to this live broadcast from Circuit Side as you're tuning in to our weekly top split broadcast in the iRacing Porsche Cup by CONSPIT. And you can be tuning in only on YouTube at youtube.com and search for TX141 TX or 30 Paul Walsh, and you can be tuning in there. And welcome to you all tuning in today, and I hope you're all doing well and all set for absolutely thrilling action from our revised time slot of the 21:45 Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinate Time UTC slot, as according to a popular vote in the iRacing official Porsche Cup community Discord. With the time zone changes of summertime concluding around the world for most countries, it does mean that we have taken a vote and we have moved from our regular 19:45 GMT slot to 21:45 GMT or UTC in order to continue to make sure these top split broadcasts are as fully populated as possible and bring out the very best to the grid each and every week. So on our schedule for tonight, we can see we've got our one race, 15 laps in duration, and due to get underway in approximately what will be 4 to 5 minutes time. But as we get set to go racing, well, let's give you a quick recap of the season so far and what we still got lying in wait. Because as we can see, we make our way into the second half of the season and we will be in the 21:45 GMT or UTC top split slot all the way through to the conclusion of the season. And last time out at the Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, we had an absolute thriller. But on the cards, of course, is Imola today. In a week's time, it's Road America for week 8, Mount Panorama for week number 9, Long Beach Street Circuit for week number 10, week 11 up penultimate week sees us at the Sebring International Raceway, and we conclude it all at the Snetterton Circuit on Wednesday, the 3rd of December. We have got an absolute monster of a second half of the season to follow on from an absolutely incredible first half of the season. This 2025 Season 4 schedule really is the best hits. You couldn't ask for better, and we make our way into the second half today onto an absolute brilliant circuit. Speaking of which then, as we head out onto the Grand Prix layout of the Imola circuit, located near the town with which it takes its name in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy, and named after, of course, both Enzo Ferrari, the mastermind behind Ferrari, and originally his son Dino, who passed away before his father. Well, this circuit is absolutely iconic. 17 corners, and as we mentioned earlier, plenty of chicanes, 4 in total, along with multiple long straights and also some hairpins thrown into the mix. Around here, our drivers are going to have plenty of opportunities to overtake, but they're also going to need to absolutely nail their laps, because the smallest of mistakes could lead to them losing multiple places from the very start all the way through to the finish. And a huge thank you to iRacing.com, not just their brilliant simulator, but also the track maps that come with it. And this track map, an absolutely identifiable one. You don't need the coordinates names nor the numbers, you just need to look at it and you'll know exactly what you're looking at. It's the Imola Grand Prix circuit. But as our drivers get ready to go racing today, well, in terms of our rules, because we can't go racing without them, setup-wise, it's an open setup series. Our drivers bring a setup of their choosing to each and every week of racing, and therefore it comes down to your ability to know the Porsche Cup car in and out with regards to setup and how best to optimize it for the circuit, as it is your capabilities behind the wheel of the car and also your circuit knowledge. As for how we set up the race, well, the grid shall be set via a closed qualifying session, which is currently ongoing and due to come to a close shortly, and we'll see the race commence via a standing start, as is the tradition of the iRacing Porsche Cup. Drivers shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 70 more instant points, and if they get to 25, they will be disqualified. But hopefully we don't see that. But what we do want to see is plenty of racing, so let's go back to circuit side and see those who are out there at the moment on their final laps in this qualifying session. We do have a few drivers still out there right now trying to deliver laps, and we've got plenty of regular faces here, including the likes of Christian Carlson, who's on his final flying lap, and we've also got plenty of fresh faces here, and we look forward to seeing how they all intermingle as we do bring up the iRatings and the licenses of all the drivers down the timetable left-hand side of your screen, so you can see exactly who the very finest are out there and who those are going to become the David versus Goliath drivers, if you will, as Luis Felipe Calderon moves all the way up to second place. They have a very good last gasp lap with 1 minute 42.646, so that puts him on the front row of the grid. Strength of field for this split, 5,102. It's only slightly below the 5,158 we had at Road Atlanta only a week ago, and we have had some incredible strength of field so far this season, and long may it continue. But as Calderon parks up the car, he's done his job. We look to Christian Carlson here as he continues on his way, and he's not got too far way to go. The highest I-rated driver, our number one driver, he's currently on provisional pole. It's none other than Hedy Nomamasi with an I rating in the region of 10.7 thousand, and we have got some absolutely huge I rating racers out there, including the likes, of course, of Philip Hammer and also Luis Glania. So therefore, there's plenty of I rating to be taken and plenty to be gained. But as we do see Christian Carlson crossing the line, he'll be the last driver to put a lap in, with everybody else who has got laps available in the pit lane having not set a valid lap and not having the opportunity to do so. And Carlson returns to 11th place there on a 43.658, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be qualifying complete, with the fact that nobody else can now put in a valid time. We've got some new names on the block as well, including the likes of JC Lozano. We also welcome to the grid Dominic Beck, also VT Renanen, also Lucas Schneider, and also Eric Daniel Contreras Rivera, and also I do believe we have Jean-Marc Pierre Etienne. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way to the grid and see how our drivers line up for our 15-lap thriller. It's time to make our way to racing. So as they all head onto the grid, this is how they'll line up for the Week 7 Top Split broadcast on the 2025 Season 4 campaign of the iRacing Porsche Cup by CONSPIT. On pole position, it's Hedy Nomamasi for gridandgo.com esports, taking pole position by almost 2 tenths over Luis Felipe Calderon. The Project Latam Racers drivers then be followed up by the pairing of Gareth Higgins for Team 75 Bernard by SimRC and Philip Hammer for Pole Promotion Esports, the two of them separated by only 28 thousandths. Luis Glania starts stay 5th place, knowing that he wasn't far off of the front row of the grid, nor was Paul Jaffreau, who starts 6th place there, and it's good to see the Frenchman back on the grid once again, looking to go for gold. We then do have new to the grid, Henrik Führer, the Hungarian driver there, starting in 7th place at FTW Motorsport, ahead of Jean-Marc Pierre Etienne, with the driver there starting 8th, and then we do have Jed van Hemert starting in 9th place, the Australian driver, ahead of Michael Zill, who returns to the grid from Poland, and he completes your top 10. Outside the top 10, starting in 11th place, it'll be Christian Carlson, the Norwegian driver there, just missed out by a couple of attempts, but a tenth ahead of Guy Edwards, newcomer to the grid today. And for the Briton, it's to the Brazilian of Nicolas Gomez, who returns once again. Great to see the number 8 driver out there giving it his all for Brazil, and he'll be ahead of Maurizio Lamberto for Sart XMC. And then we do have Carl McGuinness for Pole Sim Racing, representing the team from the United States, albeit he's a British driver, and he'll be starting 15th place ahead of Jean van der Velden, who starts 16th for the Netherlands. Then it's Fabian Ming, 17th from the grid, behind his teammate from Pole Sim Racing, but ahead of none other than Mehmet Barat-Akus. And from the Turkish driver, it will then be at 19th place to Theo Jernberg, ahead of JC Lozano. And then we do complete that grid with, firstly, your 11th row of the grid consists of Dominic Beck and none other than VT Renanen. And then we do have Lucas Schneider and Eric Daniel Contreras Rivera completing that starting order. Well, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, the grid is set. The lights are about to go on. It's the distant view. And for the first and only time today, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, firing lights. And it's lights out, and away we go here at Imola as Hedy Nomamasi gets a good start. But look at Calderon immediately tucking in behind as they roll the way down. Gets a little bit nasty there between drives further back. I believe that's Paul Jaffreau getting caught out as he went to the curb at turn 1. But in towards the Tamburello chicane they go, and as they do, oh, goodness me, a couple of drives onto the grass. That's going to go very wrong. Philip Hammer goes on around as well. It's pandemonium there before they've even cleared the opening couple of corners. Everyone tries to get it back together, but we've had a disastrous start for several drivers, and we're going to need to get a replay to understand exactly what was at the epicenter of that, but several drivers getting it very, very wrong, and those who've been able to get it right start to break away as they exit Villeneuve, but not without Christian Carlson there following Guy Edwards onto the gravel. Albeit Carlson has gained 3 places as a result of all the chaos and carnage right at the start. As he makes way up the hill now, well, everyone will try to settle it as much as possible, but we can see here Theo Jürgenberg and Carl McGuinness battling side by side. Albeit Jürgenberg there holding on to 15th place. He roars his way up the rise, but as they head in towards the next braking zone at Piratella, well, now it's going to be about cold tyres and cold brakes, trying to warm up as quickly as possible. Paul Jeffro was really at the heart of all the madness as Carl McGuinness follows there. What is Jürgenberg off the road? Jürgenberg rejoins, McGuinness comes with him, 3 wide down the hill to Aqua Minerale. They go, that's not normal, but they settle their differences, and Philip Hammer recovers some places. He squeezes past Berat Akus and also Nicolas Gomez, but goodness me, that's a heavily damaged car for Philip Hammer, and we do have a meatball flag, or the orange and black flag, for Nicolas Gomez, so he will need to come into the pit within the next 3 laps to repair the car, otherwise he will be disqualified from the race. As we do see Hammer trying to keep it together there through the auto chicane, he finally does, and onwards they go towards the end of the lap. Speaking of which, the end of the lap, here is your race leader, Mamasi, as he already heads towards lap number 2. And well, it's been a good start for him, but he has not yet dropped Luis Felipe Calderon, nor Gareth Higgins, or Luis Glania. So Mamasi leads ahead of Calderon, followed by Higgins. Then it's Glania in 4th place. That's your top 4. They're starting to break away. Then we have show up here Etienne in 5th ahead of Hemert. Then we've got Guy Edwards in 7th ahead of Christian Carlson, followed by Johan van der Velden in 9th. And Dominic Beck completes your top 10 hot on his heels, with then Eric Daniel Contreras Rivera, who started from the very back of the grid. Well, somehow he's avoided all the chaos and carnage, and the Mexican drivers all the way up to best the rest place in 11th. Albeit we see there Van der Velden under a bit of pressure to try and make a move on Beck. He wants to get through as quickly as he can, but he's not going to be able to do so, is Beck, and therefore, as they wait, well, right now they're going to bring themselves backwards to what will be Rivera right behind. But up the road, well, we can see here Luis Glania, he's had a very poor start to this lap because he's actually fallen backwards, and that's going to be to Gareth Higgins now, who tries to get over the back of him. And right now the Sim RC driver, at one point, of course, known as Mr. Second Place, but a number of times he finished second on the podium, and he started to finish in 3rd place, and he got his name demoted to Mr. 3rd Place, but right now he doesn't want to become Mr. 4th Place as he heads up the hill. And as he roars his way on around, well, right now trying to get into the slipstream as much as possible, as tightly as possible. But again, this is now going to show potential signs of car setup. With those who've gone for maximum rear wing, they'll be very fast through the corners and the chicanes, but they will struggle on the straights, whereas those with a little bit less rear wing, they may struggle in some of the corners, but they will gain massively on the straights, particularly when they pick up a toe. And there's 2 ways of setting up a car for Imola. You do want a high amount of downforce on the car, you do want it to be towards maximum, but those who can shed some rear wing, they normally will gain over race time if you can take 1 or 2 clicks off, just because the slipstream becomes so powerful the less rear wing you run compared to the car in front of you. But down in towards Ravazza 1, Fabian Ming right now, we may have put in the chat this isn't his track, and right now Paul Jafros makes sure it's not his track as he goes up the inside there to 13th place, but Fabian's definitely doing a good job having started in 17th place, but now he's got Lucas Schneider behind him, and Schneider here getting quite close as they head down the start for the straight. We jump on board with your number 21 driver, looks one way and then the other. Can he find a way in? Well, he thinks about it the first time, decides not to, holds the racing line and holds that outside and plays the patience game here. As much as he could have perhaps gone for a dive, decides not to. But speaking of dives, is that going to be Theo Jürgenberg looking up the inside of Lamberto? The answer is no, he plays it safe. But speaking of things that weren't played safe, we definitely had a bit of a scrappy race start. And well, as we do see our leaders here started to roar their way up the hill, albeit the problem is Mamasi is now breaking away and Calderon is 1.2 seconds away. Well, we are shortly going to get a replay of that race start and try to understand what exactly went wrong for so many drivers, but we can't quite walk away yet from Luis Felipe Calderon being under major pressure from Luis Glania as they come down in towards Aqua Minerale and quickly escape it, but these drivers are very closely wound up, and as we ride on board looking back from the rear of the number 12 car, well, right now under major pressure is Calderon as he chucks the car into the auto chicane. They practically hop their way over those apex curves. Cut them too tightly, you'll pick up a slowdown. Cut them incorrectly, and you either bounce out and go onto the runoff area, or worse, to the grass, or you just lose the speed. But both drivers, they're absolutely nailing it. And as they come down towards the end of this lap, well, right now, definitely we're seeing our race leader starting to abscond with the lead, and the fight for second place becomes a three-way affair, with Calderon and Glania right at the forefront, and meanwhile, Gareth Higgins trying to make it a menage a trois. But on to lap 4, they roar, and as they do, well, let's take a look back at what exactly happened at the race start. So this was your race start heading down into opening corner. Can we get the blimp camera? No, we can't. That's not the best angle. What we can do is look at Paul Jaffreau, who seems to be at the epicenter of it all. He outbroke himself, tapped the rear of Philip Hammer, so he missed his braking point, did Jaffreau. No malice meant there, but unfortunately Hammer does become the big recipient of the chaos, and that's what triggered off the chain reaction. Can we get an on board with one of our drivers a bit further back? This was on board with Mehmet Barrett. Well, in fact, that was on board with Paul Jaffreau here, and this is him. And you'll hear there as he tries to get the car stopped, whilst we did see Hammer battling side by side there with Glania. Well, Jaffreau just came in too hot, and then everything followed afterwards. Henrik Führer, he was in amongst all this as well. He was just a little bit well, in fact, he was just in front there, so Jaffreau got caught up with him as well. Führer decided to try and turn in, only to find Jaffreau was right in his face, and he could not turn anymore. We also had this for John van den Velden. This wasn't his on board. He was a lot further back in all of this, in the number 22, so he's going to see the chaos begins in front of him, but then what exactly goes wrong? Well, he ends up going to the grass and the gravel there, and he decides just to take the safety route. 9 it's chaos around him, only to rejoin and go slightly sideways, but just about got it together there. Well done to van der Velden. That could have been a lot more difficult. We also had this for Nicolas Gomez. He was in amongst all the madness as well. Here's one of the drivers who got caught up there. And, well, in the end, he tried to go side by side, and it didn't quite work out because he found Hammer rolled right back into the path of his car. So that explains their story, and we are going to come back to your live racing, ladies and gentlemen, because as much as we could dissect what happened there at the start of the race to the end of time, we can't afford to, and instead, we are now going to come back to all the excitement, because going on to a fifth turn of the circuit, Hayden Omamassa's still leading, but Calderon now under pressure as Glania's going to look down the inside in towards turns 1 and 2. It's going to be a drag race here, and Lewis Glania gets ahead. Calderon does not fight it too hard, and that is smart driving there for the number 12 driver. Decides, right, I can't beat him. What's the point fighting him? I might as well tuck in and use him to pull me along. Meanwhile, Fabian Mings just found his way ahead of Lucas Schneider towards the end of the previous lap, and now he's going to try and hold him off. But Schneider looking around the outside here. Mings goes as defensive as humanly possible in the blue and black car. Takes a lot of apex curb there for the Pole Sim Racing machine, but to be fair, he's going to hold this. Schneider with some front end damage right now looks one way than the other, but can he find a way out the inside into Villeneuve? He thinks about it and then thinks against it, as that was a big slide wide there from Maurizio Lamberto as he made his way out of Tembrello chicane, using all the track and plenty more. We call that value-added tarmac, and well, Mehmet Barakas is keeping him honest with some pressure from behind. And it's been a challenging race for so many drivers. A lot of wounded cars out there right now, just trying to avoid needing to come into the pits for repairs, because if you have to pit in one of these races, it really is your race in arrears, given the fact, of course, these are no more than 25-minute in length races. They are lap bound, but the idea of the number of laps is to make it about 25 minutes. No pit stops whatsoever. If you do have to come into the pits, that's going to cost you a huge amount of time, and it will effectively put you out of the run. And the only exception would be is if we did have a mixed weather race, and we did have some mixed conditions at the Bend much earlier on this season, where it was a wet circuit that was drying, but the majority of drivers opted to start on the slick tyre. It was the right tyre. The one driver who decided not to was Gareth Higgins, who gave it the best possible shot he could, but in the end he had to settle for a much lower finishing position because his wet tyres overheated. But right now, it's getting very hot here down to Ravazza 1. That is Henrik Führer up the inside. As hold up a second. That's a turn, and that is Eric Daniel Contreras Rivera being turned around by, well, not Fabian Ming there, trying to see who that was who turned him on around. And, well, and it went very wrong. I think that was Paul Jaffreau who got caught up there. And, well, meanwhile, a bit further back, now get himself up to speed. Well, Lucas Schneider's going to make his way past Rivera as well. So the Mexican driver who started so well, gained all those places, has found that he's been relegated back because he's still gained compared to his last place start, but the number of places gained has been slashed by 4, and now he's got all the work to do again, and that's not going to be a happy man, as that's a big lock up on the braking there to Tamburello. Car slides loose onto the gravel, and well, as he trundles his way along, understandably right now this is going from good to bad to disastrous for the number 24 driver, and I think his hopes are going to be absolutely dashed. As meanwhile, we do unfortunately have our first disqualification of the day. This is Nicolas Gomez in a heavily damaged car. Something tells me right now that may be either for instant points or the fact he's got damage on this car, but he believes he can still drive it, even though he has been told he needs to breathe on in. Well, he's going to carry on out there. I suspect if he continues to accrue laps, he will be required to go straight to the pits. And there we go. He has immediately been towed to the pits, and that is the disqualification procedure in full force. And I believe that is for damage on the car, and we're in the end trying to soldier on. I need to find out you can't go any further. But But meanwhile, we need to take a look back at what happened to Contreras Rivera. And this was the incident only months ago. Paul Jeffro was right in the scene of the incident, we believe. Came in way too hot into the braking zone, only to find the man right on the apex. Well, Paul Jeffro has definitely been at the scene of two major incidents today, the overlap incident and now that. And I wouldn't be surprised if a few drivers will be having a word after the race. And, well, we will not be privy to that, but hopefully they can keep it as civil as humanly possible. But meanwhile, back to your live racing. And Philip Hammer, who was the driver who really was at the epicentre of the incident with Paul Jeffro on the opening lap at the Tamburello chicane. He's trying to find his way past Theo Jernberg as they come down towards Rabatza. Is he going to be able to find a way out the inside this time? No, he's not. He's going to have to wait. Meanwhile, all the way out towards Tamburello, this is Henrik Führer. Up the inside there of Jon van der Velden, and another lovely move being made there by the number 6 driver, continuing his recovery drive, and will make his way past the Pink Panther machine with van der Velden running a very nice livery on the car, it must be said, really channeling the spirit of the cartoon character. But right now it's no cartoon here for Henrik Führer, it's serious face on, and the number 6 driver continuing to muscle his way up the order. A bit further up the road, we do see Jed van Hemert, and the Australian driver here right now looking in a good position to be making his way away there from Pierre Etienne, albeit the Frenchman right now quite close behind as they come down in towards the Aquinarale sequence. But this is where the concertina effect plays a big role, and we jump on board with Pierre Etienne as they head up towards the Auto chicane. Now, what at this point might be going through the drivers' minds? Well, all the chaos of the open half of the race has definitely now started to settle and go away. So what this means is at this point, now you're locked into your battle with a driver who's quite close to you, or you're playing the game of chase. For Pierre Etienne, it's going to be all about trying to chase down Van Hemert, and he's got to try and keep in mind the fact that over the 15-lap distance, the tyres, they will be good for approximately 2/3 of the race. So at least 10 laps, he'll be able to use them at full attack. However, beyond that, then he's got to try and manage them. So, tyre management is a big factor here, and the Imola circuit quite an aggressive one on brakes, perhaps a little bit less so on tyres by comparison. So therefore, he can abuse the tyres a bit more, but he's got to be careful of not overheating those brakes with all the braking, and particularly not locking up. But right now, not locking up here is the battle between Fabian Ming and Lucas Schneider. These two continue to fight each other as they make their way down the start-finish straight, side by side as they cross that timeline. And well, no one giving in here out of the two of them, but Ming's on the outside. So naturally, this is going to give Schneider the opportunity to go in on the inside into the brakes. He'll do so, and well, Ming tucks in behind, looks at the cutback, but this is all for naught there as he rubs the rear end of his rival. And now we'll just have to settle back in. And a slightly compromised line there. And we'll definitely feel a bit of discomfort when he's in the dirty air of the car in front. But a slowdown for Dominic Beck, meanwhile, and well, in fact, no, it's not for Dominic Beck, it's for Henrik Führer, and well, as we do see them make the way up the hill, well, Henrik Führer will fall away from this group, so he's going to fall all the way back to the best part of 3 seconds off the back of them. And meanwhile, this fight for 7th place, where it's become a freeway story between Christian Carlson, Guy Edwards, and Dominic Beck all the way on around. And right now, Guy Edwards, he'll fancy his chances here to make some more places. Already gained 4 so far today, as has Dominic Beck. Carlson has gained, well, no, in fact, Dominic Beck's gained 12 places, I should correct myself. Having started all the way down in 21st place. He's been one of the biggest gainers. But both Carlson and Edwards have gained 4 apiece. So therefore, all 3 drivers will be happy with how this is going. None more so than Dominic Beck, but they'll also be wondering how much further can they go, with Pierre Etienne being 4 seconds up the road. So right now, that might be a little bit of an extreme dream to chase down, unless Pierre Etienne and Van Hemert start to fight each other, at which point then it might become a little bit more of a realistic opportunity. But down the start finish straight they go, and as they do, it's going to be follow the leader here. Everyone will want the toe of the car in front. Even Carlson will, albeit he's too far away to pick up a slipstream for the next driver, so therefore he will have this unaided. And as they make the way to us, well, the camera that is, we now ride on board, looking back from the rear of the number 6, well, the number 9 there in fact, to get my numbers correct, and as he makes his way through turns 2, 3 and 4. For Carlson right now, it's another classic run through Tamburello, absolutely nails it on, and Edwards and Beck, if anything, are starting to get closer to each other, and that's something that Carlson can potentially look to achieve. He can get them to fight each other, and if he does, that is only going to buy him plenty of time and room to breathe. However, the risk of getting 2 drivers behind you to fight each other is that if you make a mistake and you leave the door open for an overtake, you may end up gifting 2 places away rather than 1. So it is a double-edged sword, but right now Carlson doing a fantastic job, as he normally does, of being able to gauge situations correctly and making sure to place himself comfortably inside this top 10. Or at least that will be his target by the checkered flag. But a bit further back, here's a man who's continued to be on the charge, putting aside everything that's happened to him in the early stage of the race. Paul Jaffreau right now, the Frenchman absolutely all over the back of Froyer as they head up the hill and in towards the auto chicane, and his goal here is to try and make his way into 10th and then see if he can go a bit further, because he does have pace to match the likes of Philippe Calderon and also Gareth Higgins. He is lapping in the low 43s when he's in clear air. So right now for Paul Jaffreau, he's out of position, and well, understandably there are reasons why he's out of position because of the earlier incidents he was involved in, but right now, make no mistake, he'd prefer to finish this race without incident. He's just got to get it absolutely right, as Dominic Beck has had an absolute nightmare of a Vatsa 1, and he's had a big lock-up, I believe. He's gone to the gravel and now has rejoined. So as he does so, he loses Edwards and Carlson, and he is at risk now of being reeled in by Foyer and Jaffreau. In fact, he is going to be reeled in here because the slipstream is now active, and in good time as well, I think Guy Edwards will say, because he wants to now make a move on Christian Carlson. He's not going to be able to find it there into turn number 2. He'll have to wait. He got close within 2 tenths, but it wasn't enough. He wants to be within a tenth before that braking zone to try and force the move. But Beck, Foyer and Jaffreau, they're all now heading up towards Villeneuve. And as we jump on board with the number 3 machine, we can't really look for a move here, but he can definitely look to get as close as possible. The problem is he's getting close at the wrong points of the circuit, and that's another challenge. That's one of the things they have to master here. And in fact, you might be the faster driver, but if you get too close at the wrong point, well, you've got one of 2 things you need to do. You either back off, or you hit your rival in the rear and you send both of yourselves around, or you send your rival around, you carry on, but you're going to be called into the steward's room. And for these official races, of course, incidents can be reported to the official iRacing stewarding team, and an action will be taken subsequently if a driver is deemed to be at fault. But as we do see Jaffreau right now getting close again into Minerale, trying to time the exit here, does so quite nicely, but on the uphill, just slightly getting a lot of wheel spin there. That's going to cause the gap to open up by half a tenth as I head in towards the braking zone, and right into left they go. And right now at Alta, Jaffreau just not close enough to be able to look for that move. He's getting close, but he's getting close in all the wrong points. As we do say hello there to Nicolas Gomez, the Brazilian driver, of course. 22nd, unfortunately disqualified from this race, most likely due to the damage picked up on all the instant points with it for the earlier contact. Well, sorry to see you've had a difficult race, Nicolas, but glad to have you joining us and tuning in right now. And, well, I do appreciate it. It's not the Imola race you've wanted, but still plenty more racing later on this week, my friend. And we do look forward to seeing you back on the grid for the next Top Split broadcast in a week's time, because we know that you've got a lot of pace, a lot of potential, and you just haven't been able to show it today. But all of our drivers come through, and we make our way now into the final third of this race as we come back to the front of the field. Here's Hayden Mamassi still controlling it from the very front. But right now you can understand if the grid and go driver is a little bit wary of the fact that Luis Glanier and Luis Philippe Calderon are matching him for pace time. In fact, these 3 drivers separated by the best part of only what is half a tenth, if that, over the course of the previous lap. In fact, the delta was a 1 minute 42.66 for Mamassi, Glanier a 1 minute 42.71, and in between, Calderon a 42.69. That shows you how equally matched these drivers are on pace. But of course, Glanier and Calderon were looking more at each other and fight each other earlier on, and that's what has enabled Mamassi to be able to pull away, as well as some hard graft to just have a slightly faster first couple of laps. But he's had to really work hard for it, and that is definitely why he's your leader. But looking from them to a bit further down the order, we look to Michael Zill and also to what will be Carl McGuinness shortly. We're coming over the hill behind him. And Zill right now, one of the drivers who got wounded in the early stage of the race. McGuinness another one. They both had difficult starts to this, but still they're carrying on here and seeing what places they can pick up before all is said and done. You always want to finish these races, of course, because when you do, well, you make sure you don't lose as much safety rating or I rating, but also the fact you can always pick up some time. You can always learn something about the car over the race distance. As Philip Hammer there gets very close to the back of Theo Jürgenberg through Minerale, and I think right now that Porsche, the Pole Promotion Esports, with the damage it's wielding, well, it does seem to be snaking and sliding all over the place. I wouldn't be surprised if the suspension is pointing at an angle as we do jump aboard with Hammer. And do we see the steering point at an angle? Yes, we do. It is pointed slightly left by the best part of about 15 degrees. That would explain why the car is wobbling so much in a straight line, and why under braking he's really struggling. It hits the rear there of Jürgenberg, and Hammer immediately backs off. But that is a damaged car, and Hammer right now in a very uncomfortable place lets Jürgenberg rejoin. But understandably, I think at this point he just wants to try and get the car home and not be a hazard to anybody out there. But damaged cars, of course, always do become a little bit hazardous to drive, and it all comes down to mastering them. But meanwhile, looking for a move up the inside. There's a bit of contact there. That's going to be Dominic Beck, who's just scored outside. Henrik Foyer up the inside, and Paul Jaffoe sneaks on through as well. And they were getting closer and closer, but Jaffoe's not done here, because right now Foy's going to be on the outside into Piratella. Jaffoe on the inside on the right of your picture goes up the inside, and Paul Jaffoe gains 2 places for the price of 1 moment, and it's a lovely bit of work there for the number 3 driver, and indeed just going to show that if he can't find his way through at outright pace, he'll find a way through for the opportunities given to him by other drivers' grace. And over the rise he comes then, and right now Jaffoe 2 seconds away from Guy Edwards, but firstly he'll need to make a break away from the drivers who are close behind him. But on paper, he should be able to get this done because he is the quickest of the 3. But as we do see a big slide there from Dominic Beck in the rear of the picture, coming out to the auto chicane right now. Beck, I think, frustrated with the way this has gone. And we look to get a replay of exactly how that all started. And here it was then. So it was roaring the way out to Villeneuve, and Beck having a slow run out the corner. This led to a move being seen there by Henrik Foyer. Went up the inside but made that contact, and that forced Dominic Beck out wide. It meant Foyer was on a compromise line on exit, and the rest of it was consigned to history there as they made the way out the rise. And well, Henrik Foyer in the end having to give way to Paul Jaffoe, who had that inside line and was never going to let it go. Back to your race we come, and as we do, we are not too many more laps away from seeing the checkered flag. We're on lap 13 of 15, so this one plus 2 more. Meanwhile, from Maurizio Lamberto, he's chasing after Fabian Ming here and trying to take the place of 14th. Around the outside, Ming goes defense in the middle of the road. Lamberto swings it back to the inside. That's a dummy, but in the end, he makes a dummy of himself, he'll feel, because he outbrakes himself and goes straight onto the gravel at Tamburello. And that's going to be Fabian Ming, who takes the place back immediately. Great attempt there from Maurizio Lamberto, trying to send the dummy, but I think in the end called it too late. And Fabian Ming called him out on his attempt, and will essentially said to him, look, you're either going to be on the outside and you're going to struggle to go round, or you're going to go to an inside and run out of braking road. And in the end, it was the latter for Maurizio Lamberto. But still, effort where it is, and he'll try and come back at Fabian Ming within the next couple of laps, because the way he straightened it out means he won't have scorched the tyres as much as if he had slammed on the brakes. So that's why he went straight onto the gravel then, decided not to brake but let the gravel slow the car for him. As meanwhile, Michael Zil battling here with Daniel Contreras-Rivera as they head in towards Piratella. Looking around the outside is Zil. And the Polish driver right now find himself slightly there nudged out, albeit not contact, but realised that today he was going to run out of tarmac and had to back off. And as they head in towards Akko Minerali, he's looking very feisty right now. Here's our number 11 driver as they head up the hill. He fancies his chances here. I think he's going to go for it to alter. Surely he's got to be going for it here. He thinks about it, but he's not close enough to, as it's gone very wrong for somebody up the road. That's a big mistake there for Rivera, and that's going to enable Zil to come on through and take 17th place there off of Eric Daniel Contreras-Rivera. And meanwhile, we've had a moment for Maurizio Lamberto, who got it wrong at the Alta chicane. What exactly went wrong? Here's a quick retake to explain. So we're still trying to chase after Fabian Ming. Bounced his way through the first curb, got the second curb, but went up into the air. All 4 wheels left the ground, and as it came down, came slamming on down. 360-degree pirouette, so 10 out of 10 for sliding that out. But unfortunately for Lamberto, an error, a very costly one at that. And well, as we mentioned earlier with the Alta chicane, you've got to nail it right on those apex curbs. If you cut them too tight, it's a penalty. If not, and you cut them too wide or too high, and that exactly is what happens there. You just saw it happen to none other than Maurizio Lamberto, where the car will bounce up into the air, and when it comes on down, it will come crashing on down and go for a spin. But back to the front then, and on the penultimate lap right now, Hayden Massey. Last lap was the fastest lap of the race, at 42.45. So right now, our race leader continuing to extend his advantage. And I think that goes to show you he has been doing some tyre saving over this race just to give himself a bit of breathing room in case Glania or Calderon were closing towards the end. But right now, for Hayden Massey, this is looking to be a race. There's all said and done. And Luis Glania, well, he does have a 1.1 second advantage over Luis Felipe Calderon. These two continue to push each other the distance, but right now it's going to need a little bit of intervention or a mistake of Glania's own doing to perhaps reopen this battle for second place, because the final lap ticks on, the white flag begins to wave, and right now our top 3 seem to be securing the positions for the remainder of the day. Gareth Higgins, conversely, he's in 4th, a very lonely 4th place here right now for the number 4 driver. He's matching up with his door number, so he's finishing where he's expected to finish based on his iRating, but right now I think he wishes he was a little bit closer, albeit though last lap a 45.15 compared to the 42s and 43, the low 43s of Glania and Calderon. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a small mistake for Higgins, perhaps a lock-up at somewhere on the lap, and therefore he had to lift off the brake and just let the car roll out. Jed van Hemert, well, he's not too far away, and indeed he's trying to give chase at the moment ahead of Chemat Pierre-Etienne, and these two are running relatively close to each other, but again, no real anticipation of a fight here unless one of them makes a mistake, particularly the leader of the group. Christian Carlson, He's holding to 7th at the moment, but Guy Edwards is the man in danger because he's got Paul Jeffro looking for a potential move. Up the hill they come then, through the Tulsa hairpin, and it's a brilliant exit there from Edwards. To be fair, nails the exit, as does Jeffro, and that's going to give him just enough breathing room as they head up over the rise. But will Jeffro think about it to Piratella? The answer is no there. Instead, he stays nice and close, coming out of the left-hander, now down in towards Akmanarale. And this isn't a place where you go too wide normally, and Jeffro knows that, so he decides to wait. But Edwards here finds himself under so much pressure as they head up the hill, and right now we'll follow them up to the Alta chicane for a brief moment, and then we'll have to leave the B. Jeffro's going to look up the inside here, but is he going to go for it? No, he won't. He'll tuck in behind, as meanwhile we come back to the man who slides his way out of Ravatsa 2, and well, he's been smooth once again as Heidi Namamasi, and as the checker flag beckons, it's going to be a win here for the Grid and Go driver by the best part of 3.2 seconds over Pole Promotion Esports' Luis Grania, and then it will be Luis Felipe Calderon who completes your top 3. Gareth Higgins, he'll come through shortly to take 4th place, and a solid drive from him ahead of Jed Van Hemert, who makes his debut of a 5th place finish. Then it will be Chomat Per Etienne, who rounds off your top 6 ahead of Christian Carlson, with Guy Edwards just hold off Paul Jeffro at the finish line, and then it will be Henrik Foyer, who finishes in 10th place, just ahead of Dominic Beck, who was best the rest in 11th, having started all the way back in 21st. Jorn van den Velden, a solid performance from him in the Pink Panther machine, takes 12th from a 16th place start, ahead of Lucas Schneider, and then we'll see Fabian Ming finishing 14th, just ahead of Mehmet Barrett Akas as they round off your top 15. And there'll be Maurizio Lamberto, who comes home in 16th place, ahead of, I believe, Michael Zill, who in the end has to settle for a frustrating 17th. Carl McGuinness will take 18th as he slides his way across the line. And then it will be Philip Hammer in an absolute nightmare day of a day today for the German driver. It's not been the way he's wanted it to go whatsoever. And he will take 19th, with Theo Jernberg in 20th. And then we will have what will be your last lead lap finish. He'll be promoted to 20th most likely. It'll be Eric Daniel Contreras Rivera, who rounds off your top 20, Jernberg down to 21st, and then 4 laps down, but he is going to finish this race after all the repair works of the car. It is going to be none other than JC Lozano, who got caught up in all the chaos in the opening lap, and in the end had to spend the best part of 7 minutes being repaired. But to be fair, this is a joy to see, and give him a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. He is going to see the checker flag, and he will take 22nd, which will be only a couple places down on where he started, but it's an improvement on his door number, and he'll be happy with that. So as the racing comes to a close here at the Imola circuit, and the circuit very quickly falls silent, we take a look to the scenic view, and with it the provisional results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, of which there may be some after those couple of incidents early on. But in our Week 7 top split broadcasted race of the 2025 Season 4 campaign of the iRacing Porsche Cup by CONSPIT, Heidi Namamasi put it on pole by almost 2 attempts, and in the end walked away with it very gradually for GridandGo.com Esports to take the win by 3.2 seconds. Luis Grania, the privateer for Pole Promotion Esports, had to settle for second, knowing that at the end of the day it was going to come down to a fight between him and Luis Felipe Calderon for the runner-up spot when Mamasi was starting to break away, and he was able to do so ahead of the Cambodian driver for Project Latam Racers, who rounded off your podium. Gareth Higgins secured a 4th place. I think he was hoping he'd be able to get more involved in that fight for second, but in the end that fight calmed down early on, and the Team 75 Bernard by Sim RC driver settled for an absolutely comfortable 4th, ahead of Jed Van Hemert, with the Australian driver there completing a top 5, and an absolutely brilliant debut for him, and he really was the best of the rest outside the top 4. Chomat Per Etienne rounded off your top 6 there, and what a solid effort from the number 14 driver, ahead of Christian Carlson, with the Norwegian enjoying a great fight early on with Guy Edwards and also Henrik Foyer. But in the end, through the batting from the drivers behind him, he was able to gradually move away. Guy Edwards settled for 8th, the British driver just making sure that Paul Jeffro could not get through right to the end, with Jeffro recovering well after the open lap incident with Philip Hammer, all the way to a 9th place finish. And then we did see Henrik Foyer finishing off your top 10 for FTW Motorsport. Best of the rest of the length was Dominic Beck, with the Smiley Sports driver rounding off a solid run, ahead of Jorn van den Velden, and the Pink Panther driver from the Netherlands just a second ahead of Lucas Schneider. Fabian Ming finished 14th, and as we say hello to him there again in the YouTube chat, well, he definitely mentioned the fact that he might have had some damage on the car as a result of the earlier contacts, and Fabian Ming for pole at Sim Racing there, definitely having to try and bring on home a car that was not in the best of places. Mehmet Barrett Akas completed the race in 15th place, and another solid effort from the Turkish driver there, ahead of the Argentine from Sart XMC of Maurizio Lamberto. And then we did have Michael Zill, Carl McGuinness, Philip Hammer, and Eric Rivera complete your top 20. And a frustrating day for all those drivers, perhaps none more so than Eric Daniel Contreras Rivera, who at one point had made his way all the way from the very back of the field, all the way up to the top 10, only for it to go around and go down once again. Behind them, in 21st, it was Theo Jernberg, and then we did see your last finisher of the race 4 laps down, the Spaniard of JC Lozano, and we did then have non-finishes for Nicolas Gomez and also for VT Rinenen, with the Finnish driver there not being permitted to move more than 3 laps. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we did have a recap of the incidents earlier on. We're not going to get a further recap of them, unfortunately, but you are welcome after this broadcast concludes to rewind the broadcast for the replay footage of all the madness that happened on the open laps. I need plenty to dissect, but thankfully I'm not a sim racing should. I'm just a commentator. But with that, it is now time for us to wrap up. But before we do, of course, a word about our sponsor for this series, and that's none other than CONSPIT. If you are looking to take your sim racing to the next level, then why not consider CONSPIT? As the pro driver's choice of sim racing hardware, CONSPIT offers one of the most comprehensive lines of hardware products to sim racers around the world. Whether you're in the market for wheelbases, steering wheels, pedals, peripherals, or rigs, CONSPIT's extensive experience in the motorsport industry means every one of their products is fine-tuned for success at the highest level. But do not just take our word for it. We're brand ambassadors including 2022 Grand Prix Macau GT Cup champion Luo Kaliu, 2022 Porsche Carrera Cup Asia champion Liu Ye, 2022 Chinese Touring Car Championship champion Rodolfo Avila, and 2023 GT World Challenge Asia GT3 AM Cup champions Climax Racing. You shall be in pole position for victory when you invest in CONSPIT's hardware. If you'd like to know more, be sure to head to conspit.com today. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we make our way then to Road America in a week's time. And for week 8, it is going to be a trip in the picturesque countryside of Elk Arcade in the US state of Wisconsin. And we'll get to see our drivers roar full flat out for the majority lap over 4.04 miles of intense racing asphalt. But until then, this has been the iRacing Porsche Cup by CONSPIT. I've been your host and commentator, Paul Walsh, also known as TX1 or Britain the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And be sure to tune in next week on Wednesday, the 5th of November 2025, at our revised session time of 21:45 at GMT or UTC to see how the story continues. But until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, and most importantly, like our drivers, ladies and gentlemen, remember to stay on track. Good night.